Hey everybody, we're back. This is Sean Murphy with 1455, and as always, I'm really giddy to welcome another author in for the 1455 interview series. I'm really excited to catch our author today as she's in a bit of a whirlwind. Jennifer Haupt is the editor of the brand new anthology Alone Together, which I'll give her a chance to talk about a little bit before we begin the questions. But basically, this was inspired by the COVID situation and an opportunity to bring dozens of amazing writers together across multiple genres to contribute. And the proceeds of the profits of the book are helping independent bookstores. So it's just been a remarkable and inspiring endeavor. Jennifer was kind enough to be part of our Lit Fest, and we're going to be featuring some exclusive excerpts from this anthology in the next issue of Movable Type. So let me introduce Jen, and then I'll bring her on, and we'll get the questioning underway. Uh, Jennifer has published essays and other work in many publications, including the Oprah Magazine, The Rumpus, Psychology Today, Travel and Leisure, the Seattle Times, Spirituality and Health, and The Sun. She's the author of the novel In the Shadow of 10,000 Hills and Come As You Are, which is forthcoming in July of 2021. Her favorite pastimes are traveling solo and finding new stories of people and cultures, fine-tuning Spotify playlists, walking in the woods with her double doodle, and playing board games with her husband of 25 plus years and two grown sons. And I'm reading a bio, so that's a good segue, Jen, to bring you in. Part of the initial inspiration for the anthology was how COVID has impacted the literary industry, including your own work. So apologies for misstating, but it actually is a kind of a good segue to you can introduce yourself and what you've been up to.
It is a good segue. First of all, thanks for having me here again, Sean, and
My
thanks for
pleasure.
with the anthology. So when the quarantine happened, and a couple weeks in, my book deal got canceled because my publisher couldn't afford to pay my advance anymore, and the whole economy was turning upside down. And it made me really realize how bad the economy was for booksellers. Also, my favorite booksellers had closed their doors, and there was no end in sight as to when they'd be opening again. So I pulled together a group of authors to do this anthology to basically donate money to Bink, the Book Industry Charitable Foundation, and help booksellers in need. And the response I got was just so incredible. The essays and poems I got, and interviews that I did with certain authors, and so it's really become just it's become more more than an anthology. It's become really sort of an inquiry into our times.
Totally. And as a fan of the work, and I know a lot of the writers, and I'm a fan of, it's introduced me to new writers. It's such a beautiful gesture, I think, culturally and also for the literary community. So I'm happy to be able to thank you again for the unbelievable amount of work and TLC that you put into this project. And I'm glad to see it getting some ink. It seems to me like it's blowing up, and it should be blowing up. So
The greatest thing about it is it's really brought together a community of very well-known authors like Jenna Bloom and Caroline Levitt and Luis Uria and Major Jackson, and brought them together with people who are lesser known and upcoming. And so it's really brought together, like I said, just a really cool community of authors into one project.
awesome. And I just heard the bird chirp. So just in case anyone hasn't figured it out, this is not a backdrop. Jennifer is out in Seattle with rare blue skies behind her. The stars are aligned for our conversation. So as always, forgive my little shtick, but got the timer set to 14:55, and we'll pack in as many questions as we can.
Okay.
So right out of the gate, Jennifer, is there a book that you would say either made you want to be a writer or a book that changed your life?
I would say there's a couple of authors. Wally Lamb definitely is one of the authors who made me want to write fiction, and definitely made me feel like less of a weirdo as a kid. Reading She's Come Undone is just one of my favorite books ever. And Wally actually was kind enough to write a blurb for my novel that came out 2 years ago. And that was just, to me, the pinnacle of my, of everything.
That's awesome. That's a beautiful full circle moment, right? What more could a writer ask for? Well, so this interesting. I wonder if it's the same person. Do you have, or could you name your most profound artistic influence?
Um, let's see. I think, well, I really think Wally is one of my influences as who I would want to be, not just as an artist, but as a person. And,
Hmm.
he does a lot of giving back to both other authors and to the community. He works with women prisoners and helps them with their writing. And so, I think that's another thing that's really been good about this anthology is not only has it been something I could do as a writer, but just as a human. And the writers I admire most are just incredible humans also.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. How about an album or movie that you recommend without reservation?
Album or movie they recommend without reservation would be, let's see. Oh my gosh, and now I'm blanking. Um, uh, I can't think right now.
You can hold on to that one.
Okay, I'll come back to it.
So this is another one. There's a million answers, so don't feel any pressure. But what's one of your? The question is, what's the best first or last line of any book? But what's one of your favorite opening or closing lines?
One of my favorite opening lines. Well, I'm reading Caroline Levitt's new book now, and I love the opening line to it. It's something like it it's a line where it's like boom, puts you right into an argument that the two characters are having. So I really love that. And the book is With or Without You. And it's written,
Which just came out and is also getting a lot of wonderful ink, well deserved.
yeah, it's very good.
Hey, okay, cool. How about an author you think is underrated?
Author I think is underrated. Um, let's see. Um, okay, I'm gonna say Jamie Ford as a poet because he contributed a poem to the anthology, and it's wonderful. I think it's just one of the, it's so awesome, and he underrates himself as a poet, and so that's what I'm going to say.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so you have to bear. Everyone has to deal with this self-indulgent, somewhat sardonic question, which is, why have you not read Moby Dick? Or if you have, is there a classic that you've wanted to get around to and you haven't yet?
Let's see. Well, I have wanted to read War and Peace. I just think it's something everyone should read, and it's just so damn long that maybe not time with the pandemic.
In my years after grad school, like in between, I guess growing up, I always said I'm going to dedicate a summer to War and Peace, and then but it would always come down to, well, do I spend the whole summer reading one book or do I read 20 books? So
Yeah.
not maybe the best kind of calculation, but that was always my excuse that I'd be able to read so many other books in the meantime. But I too haven't read that, and I feel a little sheepish about it. All right, here's a tricky one, but I think an interesting one. Would you say, is there a single theme or topic that your work tries to address?
Yeah, it's the interweaving of grief and love, and grief is the connector for all of us. So
Right on. Okay. What about writing routines? Do you believe in them or do you have one?
I do believe in them, and right now I do not have one, which is why I am not. I haven't been producing anything, but I strongly believe that in just getting down to the work first thing in the morning, and if I do anything on social media first or look at emails first, the writing muse just goes away. So yeah, definitely for me, it's writing first thing in the morning for 3 hours.
That's, like, so even the series is pretty young, but the consistent answer, which should not be surprising to anyone, is whatever the time is, you have to make it a priority or to get the work done, or it's certainly not going to get done by itself.
Yeah, I think
So
it's habit. It's all about just having the habit of doing the writing at a certain time every day.
yeah.
Whatever time works.
Okay. How about writer's block? Do you believe in it? Have any thoughts about it?
Um, yeah, well, I sort of have writer's ADD right now where I can't, it's hard for me to focus on one thing.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's so much writer's block. It's an inability to focus is what I think it is. Um, and maybe that's what writer's block is for some people. That's what I'm finding it is for me right now. So for the first time in, I don't know, probably 15 years, I'm actually joining a group of other writers and doing a writers group. So I'm accountable to some other people who I have a lot of respect for.
Well, that's interesting because I talked to Angie Kim during LitFest, and she mentioned that I think partly COVID inspired, but just, maybe just because she thought it was a good idea. And they're doing a Zoom writers group, which I thought was the coolest. Ideally, I guess you'd be in the same room, but A, that's not always possible. And B, this means you can have a writers group literally around the world. So
yeah, that's what I'm doing too. Is it's a Zoom writers group. So hopefully that'll clear up the block.
yeah, good for you. Well, it sounds like all the cool people are doing it, so you're in good company.
That's right.
So how about would you describe a significant setback in your career, artistic or otherwise, that has put you on the trajectory that you're on?
Well, having my second novel canceled, the contract for my second novel canceled, definitely put me on a different trajectory. And it also made me think about writing nonfiction again. As I'm a journalist by trade, I've been a journalist for 25 years. And so having my novel canceled made me think about doing this anthology. And then now the next book I do will probably be nonfiction.
And do you suspect it'll be topical? I know, because I know you are very immersed, right, on a lot of levels in the moment and kind of the times we're living in.
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be topical, and yeah.
Well, good. And
Start
I always, I certainly myself have dabbled in nonfiction and fiction, but it's always inspiring to see any writer, continue to approach different genres. I mean, there's something to be said for the masters of one idiom, but I find it very inspiring that you're going to shift into nonfiction after this anthology. So that's cool.
That's the great thing about being, almost 60 years old is that I can pretty much do whatever I damn well please right now because, I've had a long, successful career as a journalist, and my first novel came out 2 years ago, and it did pretty well, and I feel good about that. And it's like, this is just do what I want to do. So that I think is really a gift.
Well, good for you. And that actually tees up the next question. It could be a very difficult one, but just generally speaking, how would you say you've developed your career, as a writer?
Let's see. I think I've been most successful developing it as a tool for psychotherapy, for self-therapy. And so, I think, yeah, I tend to think whatever resonates most with the writer is, if you can get obsessed with something, that's going to make for a good book. If you're trying to write something because you think it's marketable, or you think, oh, this is what's going to sell right now, forget it. It's not going to be good. If you need to write something, I always tell my students, what is the question that's obsessing you? And whatever that question is, that's what you need to answer by writing the book.
Yeah, I mean, so in the last conversation in this series was with Tara Campbell, and we talked about the curiosity being as important as imagination, in the sense of, for the writer, trying to answer questions that they don't necessarily know. So it's a journey. Certainly, you hope for the reader, but the primary impetus is often the curiosity to get at something that you kind of need to figure out through writing.
Yeah, I mean, the greatest moments in writing, and I think are when the writer is surprised by something that they write, and that shows up in some really interesting ways on the page, I think.
Indeed. How would you describe literary success for you personally?
I would say literary success for me personally is not worrying about literary success.
What a great answer. Home run. Just
I'm not saying I'm there, but
loving the craft. And yeah, I mean, not surprisingly, that's a theme that's resurfaced repeatedly. The idea of if you're not enjoying the work, you've already got it wrong, but also you're probably never going to really be satisfied if you're not satisfying yourself on some.
If you're doing it because you want good reviews, you're going to be, or you want to make a lot of money. I mean, either one of those things really are not going to, I don't know. That's just not going to do it.
Yep. Yep. Is there something you wish you'd known as an artist 10 or even 20 years ago?
Um, that I wish I had known 20 years ago that I could write a novel, and that was an okay thing to do. And because I wish I had started sooner writing novels.
I'm curious, what got you over the hump? Was it because you had that dying kind of curiosity question that you had to figure out through a novel?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I went to Rwanda as a journalist, and the stories I was working on fell apart. And then I went into the hills with a guide and visited like a dozen genocide memorials, and there was no one there but me and the guide at these different sites. And sharing stories with these people it made me think about telling their stories in the only way I could in a novel. So that changed everything for me.
Okay. Okay. Have you ever visited a writer's retreat? And if not, why? If not, why? And if so, how was your experience?
Yeah, I've been to Hedgebrook out in Seattle, Whidbey Island. I went to Sewanee. Mostly the retreats I've been to, I mean, they're more like workshops. So I've
Mhm.
been to Sewanee, I've been to the Aspen Writers Workshop, I've been to, let's see, Lake Tahoe, um, and so, yeah, I like hooking up with other writers who and learning from things with them. I mean, I've been on writing retreats just on my own, just like I'm going to go away for a week in the
Sure.
mountains. But I have never applied to a retreat per se where I would just go away and like, you know, be someplace. Yeah.
I think, one of the themes that resurfaces in all of these conversations, and certainly what the primary impulse behind the whole 1455 endeavor is this notion of community and why it's so important for writers, certainly trying to find an audience, but writers inspiring and supporting other writers. Um, would you talk a little bit about, how you define creativity and how you've kind of cultivated it? I mean, I think the anthology is exhibit A and speaks volumes about the importance of that and the way you're able to harness that. But maybe you could speak a little bit about what community means to you.
Yeah, I do think it's important for writers to balance this sense of wanting isolation and wanting to be, I think a lot of writers are introverts, like I am for sure. And I like having a lot of time alone. But I think it's also important to have community and have other people that you can just get and exchange energy with, because writing just zaps a lot of energy. And I think that's one thing that's hard about writing during the pandemic is that you can't get together with other people. And even by Zoom, it's not really the same thing. And so I think a lot of us are experiencing, it's more difficult to get energized around the creativity.
Yeah, yeah, and I think, I mean, I can speak for myself, but it's another recurring theme. The more writers I've talked to, this notion of it is by necessity often a solitary endeavor, but where you get hung up is when you just don't have that feedback loop or the solidarity and support. And I certainly believe that it's as critical as it's ever been. And again, I'll invoke this beautiful anthology. The idea of we are all in this together, or we're hopeless if we think we can plow through, the political and cultural landscape, or much less the artistic landscape, on our own.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. How about a 1-minute exhortation for a beginning writer looking for advice?
Okay, so I would say my best advice is to um, create habits around writing, write at the same time every day, become obsessed with something and write about that. Um, let's see, what else? Um, write for yourself above anyone else first, because if it's not interesting to you, it's not going to be interesting to anyone else. Um, and don't have expectations that you yourself can't meet. I would say. And
That's
turn off social media.
indeed, right? Yeah, that's also, I mean, a very understandably recurring theme. Um, so you did it. We got through during the last question, my alarm went off in silent mode, which I think is mental note is better because it's jarring in the middle of someone's answer to have this stupid alarm go off. But we managed to pack all the questions in. So a true professional, as expected, we were able to get through everything and get a lot of, the soul and experience and wisdom that I certainly have come to cherish, knowing you as a writer and source of inspiration. But I certainly want to thank you for sharing time with us and giving us some really good insight into what makes you tick and, talking honestly about some of the challenges and rewards.
Thanks again, Sean. This is a really cool thing that you're doing here, and I'm really happy to be part of it.
Well, you are, as I half jokingly tell everyone, I look at it like the mafia. Once you're in, we pull you in, and now you're part of the 1455 family. So there's no getting out.
Oh, I'm proud to be part of your family.
Well, I'm honored to have you here, and I will remind seriously anyone that's paying attention right now. What more do we need to say? But in this time where writers got to put their actions, and let their actions speak for them. The whole impulse behind this anthology, what it's doing, what it's intended to do, and the people it's reaching. Pick up a copy, support independent bookstores, share it with friends, buy a couple of copies as gifts. Jennifer's doing a remarkable thing for fellow writers in the industry, and it's a real honor to have her here. Jennifer, thank you for joining us, and we'll definitely be seeing you again in future programming.
Okay, take care, Sean. Bye-bye.
All right, you too. Thanks.